Good evening, all. We've got spring moving into Texas here, but up north, man, I got some viewer videos here. This one's by Mark St. Dennis up in New Hampshire, reporting quite a bit of snow coming down there today. And we've also got a video coming up by Thomas Fortner. But we've had quite a nor'easter up in the northeast U.S., 4 deaths reported, 8,800 flights canceled this week with thousands of schools closed. Connecticut has banned all highway travel today, at least for several hours. The Weather Service reported an impact on 5 million people with 20 inches of snow upstate. That was near East Jewett, near Albany. So that's, let me move the map here. So we're talking about this area right here, reporting the max snowfall. And interestingly, Boston complained, the city there complained that only about 6 to 8 inches had come down there, not near the 18 inches that had been forecast. But these systems are pretty difficult for the models to handle, and that just kind of comes with the territory here. Let's check out some of the snowfall amounts we've had, and I kind of scrambled to get this together with the METAR data, and that's about all I could find. We don't have the good old days when we had observers out there with the snowboards. That only happens at only a few select few stations. And the max I could find was 15 inches right there at Albany. So how do I get those amounts? Let me show that to you. Okay, guys, we lost the feed at some point. I looked over at the monitor and saw that it was gray, so we'll try that again. Anyway, I think right around the time I had switched off, I was looking at the amounts of snowfall up. The highest I could find was about 15 inches right there in the Albany area, and 16 around Windsor Locks, Connecticut. So how do we get these amounts? I go to the METAR observations and look at the 0Z data here. So right here for Atlantic City, no snow depth being reported there. So it's kind of hit or miss where you're going to get these amounts. JFK, however, was reporting snow depth, and you see right there that 4/, that's indicating 5 inches of snow right there. So the highest I could find was at Bradley International Airport at Windsor Locks, and that amount was right there at 16 inches. And they're still getting a little bit of snow coming down. It looks like the worst of it has passed. They're reporting 7 miles in light snow with northwest winds gusting to 25, so it looks like the heaviest stuff has pushed up into New Hampshire and Maine. So let's check out the maps. Okay, so we'll look at the 500 millibar chart, and we see the meridional pattern to the flow. We've still got the low pressure, the low heights aloft, well back to the west over Ohio, Indiana, and the Great Lakes, but that will be pushing quickly eastward during the evening hours. And we'll start seeing this ridging building in from the west. And here's the satellite loop right here. This is the latest that we have, and it's showing the heaviest baroclinicity pushing well out to the east over the Canadian Maritimes. And we're starting to get into this cold air advection pattern on the backside here. So we see that coming in. And this is mostly consisting of low cloud forms. So a lot of stratocumulus and stratus coming in from the northeast there, and not so much high cloud. So this is definitely... Okay, are we up? Looks like we're having some problems with YouTube here. I kind of wonder if the snowstorm is causing problems with the server clusters there. It's kind of odd timing here. We haven't had this problem happen until today of all times. Okay, when I saw the screen go blank here, I was on this thermal analysis checking out the weather in the northeast U.S., looking at the thickness. And remember that this is an average of the density in the lowest 5 kilometers, so from the surface up to about 18,000. And we see that the highest thickness gradients have pushed down the eastern coast and has also cleared the Canadian Maritimes there. So the cold front is probably going to be configured kind of like that. And the warm front like that. And what we have coming into Maine here is the occlusion. So already the surface system is starting to get cut off from that triple point here, from the stronger dynamics. So this kind of reiterates that the worst of the storm is over. You remember yesterday when we did the webcast, we had the warm sector kind of covering this area right here, maybe a little further south around the Delmarva area. And you can see how that's kind of tracked offshore and past Cape Cod and now located out in this area right here. So yeah, there is going to be some impact for the Canadian Maritimes, Nova Scotia. I don't think we have any viewers out there, but yeah, sure enough, they will be getting a little bit of deterioration in the weather there. Then things should be clearing. But we're getting the cold air advection on the backside of the system, so things are coming to a close here. As far as Texas, though, getting a warm air advection started up on the Great Plains here. We've seen how it's kind of fair outside and very warm in this part of the U.S. And not much coming from the west coast here. Looks like maybe cold front coming onshore here around Washington, just off Oregon. But the warm sector, even out west, is all the way up in British Columbia. So I would bet that when we go to the charts here, we're going to see temperatures a little bit on the mild side there in Washington and Oregon. Looks like some cold air in place, though, over Alaska. We haven't looked at Alaska very much this winter, but you can see that cold pool right here along the north slope, north of the Brooks Range. So it's possible that as we get some of these systems tracking eastward, that could pull down some of this denser, colder air along the Rockies. So we'll watch for that on the charts later in the webcast here. So what do the soundings look like? Let's go to Brookhaven on Long Island in the New York City area. And here's what we got there at Brookhaven. We can see northwesterly flow at the surface. And aloft, we've got westerly flow. And we can see this veering here. So this is very characteristic of a cold air advection pattern. And we can see the top of that cold layer up at about 10,000 feet. And above that, some warmer air. In fact, if we extrapolate this down to the surface, we can see that this air mass would be in the 60s if that was down at the ground. So this is a much warmer air mass, and it's being undercut by this much colder air. Temperatures down here in the 20s. And we see this very steep lapse rate right here from the surface up to about 3,000 feet. And that's a good sign that we've got air mass modification going on there in that lower part of the sounding. A couple more soundings to look at, maybe Albany. I would sure hate to be the balloon guy working on a day like this. You can see the air mass is much deeper, stretching up to about 14 to 15,000 feet deep. And quite a bit of cold air down there at the ground. And we'll take a look at one more sounding. Let's go on up the coast to Portland. Here the air mass is a little bit shallower, only up to about 10,000 feet. We can see that there's a strong easterly component. So this is north of the surface low here. Okay, before I get much further, let me just put up the dynamics panel, and I'll go to chat and see what all we missed here. Okay. Time to go through a long chat sequence here. We got Andrew here, and Mark mentioning the snow has stopped there, and the pressure is down to 980 millibars, and I do appreciate that video. Hopefully that came across. There was one video by Mark St. Dennis and Thomas Fortner, another one there, so hopefully both of those came across. Got Eddie here, and Ryan Toomies, and Fun with Tech, Brett Dean, Brian Harp, and Fred Reamer, and Ahmed from Saudi Arabia, Ron Chalfant, checking in from South California, getting a bit of a reprieve there. Wild night there at Ryan's place. Thereafter, the forecast with that storm coming up through his area. Lexi there, and Brett Dean. 27 degrees with snow and ice. Only salted only 2.5 inches. Ice also. Let's see. Mark is here, and Jason Flood. Lizard's Lair. And I'm also reading the comments here, just making sure, I'm trying to get an idea of what we've lost during those two dropouts. Okay, Ryan mentioned solid EF1 tornado last night in Plantation, Florida after 1 in the morning. Yeah, that was with that southern wave coming through that area. Very warm and windy, or snow has stopped in Baltimore, very windy now. Critical thickness, I'll probably have to cover that in another webcast. I'm going to have to get kind of caught up on that as a forecasting technique. Ryan watched the power flashes with the Barron critical alert set off when it set off the warning. Kevin McKinney checking in here. And Thomas Fortner here too. I appreciate the video. Brian Harp said somewhere today received 26 inches of snow in 24 hours. Yeah, it's a good question. I wonder where that is. 6-month South Pole Day is ending in a few days. Sounding looks like thunderstorms there anytime. Okay, lost how to get snowfall amounts from the meteor observations. Yeah, I went over that briefly, looking at the meteor observations. Let me go back to that frame. This is Windsor Locks here. And to get the snow depth, I just went to the 0Z observations here on the METARs, and see that was a correction right there. Yeah, right there, 4/16, that's going to be the snow depth there at Bradley. So you can do that for all the stations around the Northeast and find out how much snow has fallen in that area. Okay, we'll head on to the dynamics. Okay, there we can see that large wave coming through the Northeast U.S. Things are starting to look a little bit channeled here with this flow. There's the jet coming up through the Carolinas and up to the Canadian Maritimes. Okay, for tomorrow, you can see things push to the east, and we start seeing some of the ridging and height rises starting to build into the East Coast and the Midwest right there. So there's the polar front jet, and we see the ridging coming into the Minnesota and South Dakota area, and east of that, height falls. Montana, Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. So that's associated with the next system coming through. And that'll affect mostly the Great Lakes around Friday. It looks like a much quieter system here. Definitely some digging with this wave on Saturday. You see that right there. So, yeah, things do look a little bit potent. We'll have to check for changes on the GFS here. Then we get another wave coming through Manitoba here on Monday the 20th. And then things start quieting down up north, and we start looking out towards California. 22nd to 23rd, and we have been watching this for a while. This is the Great Plains next shot here at severe weather. So that's going to come across the Rockies on the 22nd, 23rd, and there it is. Large advection lobe here coming through Texas and Oklahoma midday on Thursday the 23rd. So we'll have to watch this area on the 23rd. Looks like that'll be a fairly fast-moving system, and then here comes the next shot. This looks like it's going to affect mostly the Central Plains around the 26th. I think the GFS has gone a little bit north with this. And then another trough shearing off, and then we get a cutoff low in the southwestern U.S. on the 30th. And those tend to be pretty common in March and April, these cutoff lows. And they did pose a lot of problems for the forecasts back during the days of the LFM and NGM models, because they just cannot handle these cutoff lows very well. We've seen a lot of improvements in the models since then. So when we see this pulling out at the very end of 384 hours, there's probably a grain of truth to that. Okay, one last look at the northeast here. This is the SPC experimental forecast, the meso analysis here. It looks like a lot of the heavier snow has cleared out. We're kind of like back down to flurries affecting upstate New York and New England. Okay, so that was a fairly fast-moving system there. Now it's time to head into the forecast, and we'll start out here with the high-resolution rapid refresh. And the model is showing a little bit of snow and rain. It looks like we've got the mixed layer transition line right along the New Hampshire coast to just west of Boston. And I wonder if there is a little bit of precipitation that's being undercut. Maybe the radar is overshooting some of this. So let me check out the surface map before we close out here. I'm going to go to the UCAR surface analysis. And yeah, we can see that there is definitely some snow going on here. Visibility is down to about a mile, down to 3/4 in some places here. So maybe the radar is missing out on a little bit of this picture here. So the transition line, yeah, running from the New Hampshire coast down to just west of Boston, and looks like right there through Rhode Island. So this area here being affected pretty heavily by warm air advection, and then the cold air advection coming down the backside like that. Okay, so here's the trend over the next several hours. Looks like by midnight things should be improving. A lot of this wraparound precip affecting mostly Quebec here after midnight. We see a little bit of mixed phase precip from Bangor northward into Caribou. And then we get to the end of that model run, and things are just gradually looking better and better here. So that brings us to the GFS. Okay, system moving out of the area by tomorrow morning. Looks like the low itself looks like over western Maine here. About 980 millibars there. Cold air advection on the south side. And the code pool looks like it's over West Virginia here. So as the day goes on, that little code pool is going to gradually move eastward and northeastward. And by the time we do the webcast tomorrow, you can see we've got that low pressure stationary over Maine. But we're going to have a lot of dry air working into that circulation. Kind of like that right there. So that's going to be wrapping around and gradually occluding that low. High pressure over the Mississippi Valley and cold air advection east of that, and large warm air advection pattern setting up west of that. So we're going to see warmer temperatures here on the Great Plains. Kind of a very warm into the week, and we see this northerly system pushing quickly eastward. Fronts are going to be looking like this on midday Friday. So a little bit of impact for the Ohio Valley here, and by the time we do the webcast on Saturday, we should see this system here along the coast. Looking kind of like that. That's a very rapid push to that system. Earlier during the day, looks like this on Saturday morning. And then by evening, looking like that right there. Warm air advection pattern setting up across Texas once again, and then we get another system moving through the north part of the U.S., and that'll be the last one until the California system gets started. Okay, so there goes that. Going through the Great Lakes once again, a carbon copy of the previous system, and then here, now we're looking at things deteriorating over California on the 22nd. And then it'll quickly move through the southern Rockies. There's the fronts right there on Wednesday evening on the 22nd. And then 23rd will be the big day, and we can see we're breaking out some precip either along the front or the dry line. And there they go. So this could be a severe weather day, possibly for this area right here on the 23rd. And of course, we're going to see a little bit of impact in the Midwest area and the Great Lakes. So we've got the transition line running from about Detroit up to Milwaukee and south of Minneapolis. And the warm air advection with that system will kind of push that northward, affecting mostly Michigan there. It looks to be kind of rainy here in the northeast U.S. with that system. Then we have another system coming in around the 26th. There goes that right there. This is a lot of activity coming through, one after the other. About 5 systems coming through here during the month. And then we get to the end of that, and then we see what looks like more of an overrunning upslope pattern setting up for Texas here towards the end of the period around the 29th. So right there. Okay, so I think that's about all I got for today. I appreciate you all watching, and I'll take a quick look at the chat here. Fred says, please tell me I made my last snow measurement at Grand Forks. I hope so. I don't know. Got a couple more systems coming through that region, so I don't think it's quite over there. And let's see here. 546 decameters, yep. We are going to be cooling down. So anyway, that'll wrap it up for today. A little bit of a breather coming up here, so hopefully you all enjoy it, and we'll see you all tomorrow night. Thanks for joining.